let's look at essay writing in legal studies. Essay writing in legal studies is actually quite simple. You do not need to make your writing sound too sophisticated with big words or complex sentences. In fact, as your marker, if I was ever marking something, and when I do mark, if it's too sophisticated and too complex, I start to drop you down marks because you start to lose me. The sophistication in your writing will come down to your essay structure, paragraph structure, and how well you develop and support your argument. So it's more so about the structure of your writing and what you're actually writing about, more so than the words you use to write it. In legal, this is not English, I want you to tell me exactly how it is. Plain language, plain and simple, okay? Which is great. So let's look at a few ways you can structure your essay. So you can do it by legal and non-legal responses. So you can do paragraph 1 on legal, paragraph 2 on legal, paragraph 3 on legal as well. But in that, look at non-legal responses. So both legal and non-legal. You can also do legal, non-legal, legal, something like that. You can also do it by cases. I am not the biggest fan of this, to be honest, because I think if you look at it by cases, you're limiting yourself to only really one main piece of evidence, okay, rather than by affected group or by a different part of the criminal justice system. Those are my two favorite, okay? By affected group, I believe that you should look at the affected group in every single paragraph, all three. My favorite is to look at a part of the syllabus in each body paragraph. So one body paragraph on preventative detention, like I said before. Another on continued detention, and another one on protective custody, okay, and security considerations. Different areas of the syllabus, and talk about all three of these affected groups, non-legal and legal responses, cases, and their effectiveness, okay? All right, this is my paragraph structure. This is how I would introduce, or this is my introduction structure. My first sentence is my judgment and my response to the question. In legal studies, you should always be rewording the question back to the marker with your own judgment in it. So let's say I was asked, to what extent is a criminal, or something really simple, to what extent does the criminal trial process achieve justice? Okay, this is my response. Overarchingly, the criminal trial process is limited in its effectiveness of achieving justice. Real simple, real plain. I just reworded it. I gave you that criteria and judgment already, okay? I'm not going to read through all of this, but my second sentence, I elaborate on the judgment and introduce the criteria that will be used to form judgments on arguments. So I'll read this one, but not the rest. While there are areas of extreme effectiveness, there are many limitations of the criminal trial process. Such areas can be measured by their ability to not only balance the rights of victims, society, and offenders, and reflect societal morals and ethical standards. So I'm saying the criteria I'm going to use to actually make a judgment on this is the ability of the law to both balance the rights of victims, society, and offenders, and reflect societal, moral, and ethical standards. Okay? Then I introduce my arguments, and then I reinstate effectively what I set up here. Really simple. Then my paragraph structure is where I first state my judgment for my individual argument. I elaborate on my argument, and the best way to do this is to introduce the relevant legislation. So if I'm talking about, mitigating aggravating factors, I could talk about the Sentencing Procedures Act and say something like, mitigating aggravating factors are regulated under the Sentencing Procedures Act 1999, okay? That's a really nice way to introduce my first piece of evidence. I haven't really even done anything, I already have evidence. Then I argue different perspectives. Remember, that's what really makes me have a Band 6 essay, through my evidence. So I look at one perspective and how it impacts them, the other in the third person, through different evidence. Then I state my overall judgment on the argument again, considering all perspectives, and I repeat my overall judgment. This is if it's a law reform essay. You have a different structure to normal. Firstly, you state your judgment on overall law reform. Then you introduce the need or conditions for law reform and any agencies possible. So why did we actually need law reform? What was happening in the world? Then you support these conditions with different evidence. Then you introduce law reform and begin to evaluate how effective law reform has been, okay, through different pieces of evidence, again, looking at different perspectives. Then we state our overall judgment on law reform, considering all the perspectives, and repeat the judgment. Okay, so the conclusion needs to be short and straight to the point, needs to have 3 to 4 sentences max, needs to include a summary of the points you discussed in your essay. You shouldn't recount every point, and it must address the question by looking again at your argument or thesis. Okay, we're not going to look at this entire paragraph bit by bit. Again, I would suggest downloading the slides and looking at this exemplar paragraph, but we will read this first sentence. Deportation as a post-sentencing consideration is largely ineffective in maintaining a balance of justice for the community and victims' safety and interest, as well as the rights of the accused. What did I do there? I stated the overall judgment aligned with the question that was being asked and my thesis. The question was about the ability of post-sentencing considerations in balancing the rights of those 3 parties. Okay, so you can see how I've aligned it with the question and my overall judgment for the entire essay. The second sentence, starting from this sentence, sorry, I forgot to highlight that sentence as well, provides brief background on deportation and articulates criteria being used to inform judgment, okay? I'm reminding my marker about this criteria I'm using, okay? So already pushing myself up toward a band 6. Then here I'm looking at different perspectives, okay, using different types of evidence. So offenders' rights, I'm talking about there. Community, I'm talking about here. Well, actually, I did not write this body paragraph, but this student, and they also talk about the victim, but I cannot see what that is. But nonetheless, yeah, victims. You can see there's that balance of looking at different perspectives. Then reinforcing my judgment and relating it back to the question and thesis. All right.